The Dingers podcast is on the air. I'm your host, Mitch. I'm here with my boys, Kevin and Jake, and we got a special guest tonight, Justin. You probably know him from Baseball and Whatever podcast. He's jumping on to chat some Cubs, and boys, it's going to be fun talking tonight about the Chicago Cubs because they are hot in the streets, taking 3 of 4 from the Reds and then taking 2 of 3 from the best team in the NL, now tied for the best team in all of baseball, the Atlanta Braves. So we have a lot to talk about, but let's start by going around asking how you guys are doing. Kevin, how are you feeling tonight? I know it's a little bit of a rain delay and the Cubs aren't playing great tonight, but how are you doing?
Feeling good. Even now they're down 7-2. And it's like, you know what? One big inning and we're back in this, which they've done how many times in the last couple of weeks. So still liking that. I kind of want to walk into the dugout and just say, hey, don't pitch to Pete Alonso.
Yeah, no kidding.
Feel like that changes the game dramatically if we just kind of make that decision. Other news, Ian has sent out some shirts. So I got a nice new Ian Mahan shirt with one of the lines from his songs about that triple play group or double play group from the 1900s. Pretty awesome. Thank you, Ian, for the shirt. It's fantastic. Otherwise, Jake, how you doing, bud?
I'm great. I'm still kind of recovering from the weekend. We hosted my sister's family. So it's her, my brother-in-law, and a 4-month-old, my nephew, Tommy. He's adorable. And my mom. We went to see Bon Iver here in Madison on Saturday. Very cool outdoor venue here in Madison. There's a soccer field that they played at, and soccer stadium. It's a really cool old stadium here in Madison. And it's within walking distance to our new house. So to be able to sit in the crowd and watch Bon Iver and look at Kim and be like, we walked to a Bon Iver concert tonight. It was cool. So good weekend, good weather, good to be with family. But obviously, still kind of mentally, there's a little level of exhaustion there, but it's great. It's great to be able to host family, and I'm great to be able to welcome Justin finally to the podcast. We've talked about it so many times. I got to be a guest a few times on Baseball and Whatever. Justin, welcome, man. Thanks for joining us. How's it going?
Good. No, thank you guys. I know I feel like Jake became our de facto fill-in when somebody couldn't host on our podcast. It was like, somebody DM Jake and see what he's doing and see if we can con him into coming on the show again. So no, this is awesome. You know, obviously once I got to know Jake and following you guys, it's always good just to have a Cubs podcast to listen to. So big fan. And thank you guys so much for having me on. It's been great. I know our show, Baseball and Whatever, wrapped up about a month and a half ago. So it's been nice to dig out the podcast microphone and the headphones and set it all back up. So thank you.
Yeah. And really quick, you can follow Justin's great on Twitter. He interacts a lot with us. So follow Justin at JS_MC2.
That's it.
Yeah, and you can check us out every single Monday night on YouTube, on the On Tap Sports Network YouTube channel. So go and subscribe there, and also find us on Twitter. That's where we're interacting with most Cubs fans. So at Dingers Cubs on Twitter. So we love interacting with you, Cubs fans, and our listeners. So hit us up. We love interacting with you, and jump in the chat. We love answering you guys' questions, especially since it's a rain delay tonight. If you're watching live, throw some questions in the chat, and we'll definitely try to answer them as we go through the episode. But last week, Monday, the Cubs had just made a trade for Jeimer Candelario, and we didn't really know how much impact he was going to have on this lineup. And boy, did we see it this week of just how big of an impact he does make in this lineup. I think I've talked all season long that the one thing that this team is missing in the lineup is a guy who could slug, a guy in the lineup that you can trust to put in the 4-5 hole. Sadly, Jeimer has been batting like 8th and 7th and kind of bouncing all over the place, but just somebody that can drive in some runs and that has the slug that we need. We've thrown Ian Happ in there all season long and tried to make it work, and that's just not who Ian Happ is. Ian Happ is a great, like 5'6" hole hitter, but Jeimer Candelario brings a lot to this lineup. So I just want to dig in and talk a little bit about what you kind of see with this lineup and how big of an impact he's made in this. So let's start with Jake. What do you kind of notice with this lineup? It's been really hot. We scored 20 runs, 16 runs. That's not going to happen all the time. It's not going to happen. It's going to be more like yesterday's game where we're going to have to score some runs, but our bullpen's going to have to come through. But how do you see Jeimer making a huge impact in this lineup, Jake?
Well, first I got to highlight our buddy Ron in the comments, Ron Luce from Cubs on Tap. I must know, how hot are the Cubs? I was thinking when I saw that, I don't even know how to describe. I mean, it's this level that they've hit post deadline. We'll talk about the Braves series, obviously, but my goodness, you guys, I am not bored. After going on that rant early this season about being bored, I am so unbored, even with tonight's game. Obviously, like you said, Mitch and rain delay. Even with tonight's game, we said, don't pitch to Pete Alonso anymore. It's just walk him the rest of the game. The Cubs are hot, man, and it's just fun to watch. And it's great that Jed showed trust in this team and gave Jeimer as like a gift to the fan base, right? Like something for us to finally cheer for post deadline. And I think what Jeimer brings to the lineup is he lengthens it, right? We've been talking all season about not negative impacts from corner infield. Well, in the case of, unfortunately, Trey Mancini, it was a bummer to DFA him, but it had to be done. We can get into that. But it lengthens the lineup. It puts a net positive offensive player at both corners now, because you can play Wisdom or Madrigal or Mastroboni at third. And then you can put Candelario at first base. And as you mentioned, Mitch, he's bringing the slug this year. I can't. What is his OPS? Is it still like over like 820, 830, which is awesome. I mean, it's not hitting for super high average, but that's not really the name of the game anymore. It's about slug and it's about on base percentage, so you can get drive runs in or be the run on base to be driven in. And Candelario does a great job of that, while being somewhat defensively versatile, being able to play both corner positions. So it felt good that Jed made that trade. And obviously I know we broke that down last week. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the future.
I do have to say that I think we were one of the only Cubs podcasts that on last Monday, we said that Jeimer would be playing more first base than third base. And like we nailed, like, I think you were the first to bring it up, Jake. And I was like, yeah, that's what I agree with you. I think he's going to play
Jed
more.
Talked about it. Jed and Rossi talked about the fact that it was going to be like based on their models, and Candelario hadn't played a lot of first base in like 5 years or something like that. But based on their defensive modeling, he was a better first baseman than third baseman.
Yeah,
he was one of the best NL defenders at third base too.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think there was one play on Friday or Saturday early in the game that didn't look great. Yeah. And then he made up for it. But yeah, how Justin, how are you feeling about Candelario?
Okay. Well, the first thing, I feel like it's almost serendipitous, like the guy that leaves the organization because there's, Bryant's at third, and now through this weird like wormhole, he's come back. He's this quote unquote savior so far. So, I totally agree with you guys about, him playing first makes sense. I would be lying though if I wasn't a little nervous at times with that, even though he technically grades out according to Jed as a better first baseman. That might just me being biased against Nick Madrigal. I still need to get over that, I think, because he's proven himself. But like you said, it strengthens and lengthens the lineup. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is I don't like he's, at least so far, he's been all over the place. I would like him to be like fifth or sixth. Obviously we'll see how it progresses over time. But like the one good thing is he adds so much consistency, going back to like what Mitch said about the slugging. Like every game, if you don't count tonight, and if you throw out the 8-0 loss, he's had a hit every single game so far since he's been a Cub. Now I know that's like a five game sample size if you don't count tonight, but Like, that's awesome. Like, that's exactly what the Cubs needed.
Yeah.
And now you have so much more, you can play him at first. And then, like you guys said, you can put someone else at third, or put him at third, put Wisdom at first, and then Bellinger's out in center, or Bellinger's at first and Talkman's at center. I don't know. It's so nice to have options. And I know, like, my excitement has just been growing like exponentially, and I keep having to like remind myself, like, hey, it's still the Cubs and it's August.
Yeah.
Like, you got time. But it's just been an awesome ride, and I'm just trying to enjoy it for as long as I can.
Kevin, what about you?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about the potential of taking Seiya out of the lineup to let him kind of take the time to get right, putting Talkman in right, Bellinger back in center, and then Candelario at first, kind of how that shores up the hitters while Seiya works on his stuff. I mean, clearly, I don't see him. He's not going to be DFA'd or anything anytime soon. He's just working through some things. I remember when we talked at the very beginning of the season when he came in with, like, I don't know, I'm making up a number, 25 pounds of muscle added or something like that, and it was like, yeah, that looks great. However, and you brought it up, it decreases flexibility, which is the long-term need across the entire baseball season. And then he never really had a spring training after that. He's been trying to figure it out in game. So giving him that time, keeping Talkman in the lineup, because he's been fire at the number 1 spot. Got to keep him there, and just kind of being able to take all these players who are all these super utility guys who can play multiple positions, and just figure out, hey, we need Jeimer in there. We'll put him at first. We'll keep Madrigal to keep the line moving at third. Got to keep Talkman in, and then we got Bellinger back, and it's been fantastic to watch. I think it was my middle son, Keaton, pointed out like 5 of his first 6 hits were like infield hits or something like that too.
Yeah.
It was one of those like, yep, you take him where you can get him. Clearly it's working out, and clearly a very small sample size, but already for the Cubs, he's already a 0.7 WAR player just on the Cubs. Like, since he started, it's like,
well, he has a 307 WRC plus in the 6 games. Right. With a 900 slug right now.
Yeah, we'll take it.
In the 6 games.
Yeah.
Yep.
900 slug will play.
I'll play. But you bring up like Seiya, and I brought it up a couple games ago on Twitter. I posted like, hey, would we ever think about sending Seiya down, and not like as a demotion, as just to get some games under his belt? Like, right now, he's not playing. He hasn't been playing in the lineup to really work on some things. Would they ever send him down and bring up Peralta? That's
Peralta.
Because he's been raking down in AAA. Like, would they ever think about doing that? Maybe give him like a week down there, and then if he figures it out, bring him back up. It's just to get him some game action, because right now it's like, we're throwing him in there, and it's only during the right matchups. What do you guys think about that idea? What do you think, Justin? Do you think that would be a good?
This is me like conspiracy hat, tinfoil hat here, but like, could you maybe, even to save face, could you say like, oh, he needs, he's got a hit pointer, something's not quite right. We're going to put him on the IL, let him go either to Arizona to work on stuff for a week or 2, or rehab wherever, and then send him to Iowa for a week, to rehab, and be like, oh yeah, it was all just an injury. But then it gives him playing time to work his stuff out. I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's doable. Now, whether or not the Cubs see it that way, I don't know. But I mean, it's definitely a route you could take, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, for me, it's just, I don't like seeing him just sitting on the bench.
Exactly.
Because we're going to need our bench down this stretch. We're going to need Patrick Wisdom to come up and get a good pinch hit home run eventually during this next 2 months. We're going to need that out of him. We're going to need whoever is on the bench, whether it's Talkman. They've used Talkman so in spots to come in, pinch hit against a great matchup, and he gaps one and we score 2. Like, so they're like, all the people who've ragged on Ross all season long, when you think about all the things he has done to right the ship for so many different players Now, not all of them. Didn't happen for Trey Mancini. Didn't happen for Dale Eric Hosmer. But when you look at like, we'll get into that eventually, like down the road with the bullpen, because we'll talk about that. But like Michael Fulmer, how we used him in different, started out as our closer, wasn't working. But he never gave up on him and still was trying to like, okay, we'll put you in low leverage situations in the 5th, 6th inning. But like he's been working magic on getting guys in there, giving Madrigal time at 3rd to give rest for wisdom. Like, I don't know. Like I have really seen lately what Ross has done for as a big picture manager. He's done a great job. Some maybe small in-game situations doesn't always I don't always agree with it, but we're never always going to agree with the manager. But Ross has done some great things at moving guys around, putting the hot bat in when we need to. So I like that Talkman. It's been the Talkman season. It's been, we're going to remember the catch. We're going to remember the stretch of him coming in and playing a critical role. So it's huge. Getting into the bullpen. Our bullpen has been absolute nails through this hot stretch. Talking about Michael Fulmer, what have you guys kind of noticed in Michael Fulmer? What have you guys noticed anything change, or what do you kind of see with Michael Fulmer? I'll start with you, Justin.
That's one situation where granted, I've never pitched in my entire life. I was always a middle infield guy. But I don't know what's changed, but I think it's credit to Fulmer for being able to do whatever he's doing, because that takes a talent, but also credit to like the MLB, I'm sorry, not MLB, but the Cubs bullpen or the pitch lab or whatever they've got going on, because he is totally revitalized. I don't want to say career, because I feel like that might be a little hyperbolic, but like he's totally fixed whatever the issue was, or the Cubs have helped him fix whatever the issue was. I know, Mitch, before the show started, I was talking about when they got him, I was like, oh, come on, we're going to rely on him to be our closer. And I was like, oh God. But now, I mean, he is a really serviceable guy that they can put in from the bullpen. And I feel confident. I'm like, it's not like, oh God, what's going to happen next? It's like, oh, Fulmer's in. Okay, we'll see how this goes. It should be okay. So I don't know what changes he's made specifically, but I'm glad they have him. And that is something I never thought I would have said 6 months ago, 5 months ago, whenever they signed him. So
yeah,
I think it's the pitch mix. Like he's implemented the sweeper, and the Cubs have really worked on that. And you saw in the Austin Riley at bat, he threw him like 4 straight sweepers and trying to get him chased, and he fouled off. Riley, a good hitter, fouled off a couple, but he used that and paired it with his fastball and got it on the same line, and it worked off. And then that fastball rode up and Riley couldn't catch up to it. So like pairing those together, like I think just that, like he was a big curveball or a slider guy, and people were picking that up early, and it wasn't working off his fastball. So I think that's been a huge thing.
Yeah. His cutter has gone down in usage a ton. He was throwing it 30% in April and May, respectively. It went way down to 10% in June. It's come back up to about 15%. The cutter is still a really good pitch. I'm looking like month over month. I mean, yeah, like the XBA on the cutter is still pretty solid. Still gets a good whiff rate. But yeah, like you said, Mitch, it's the sweeper. And you're seeing that league wide. If you've watched any baseball, if you've watched any live broadcast of baseball, you will notice the broadcasters talk about the sweeper. Like I know Boog and JD talk about it. It feels like every game.
Yes.
And it's not just Cubs pitchers, right? It's all around the league, to the point where like, even if you're playing baseball or you've got a kid playing baseball or whatever, they're trying to figure out how to throw a sweeper. There's always something trendy for pitchers to implement. And that's what it is this year. And it's worked. It's really worked for Fulmer. And I know I talked about it probably in, I don't know, maybe early June or late May. Sahadev Sharma had interviewed Fulmer and talked about his cutter at the time. And the issue with his cutter was that it had more break than he had been used to in the past couple of years. And so he didn't, or broke differently, to the point where like he wasn't allotting for or accounting for that at his release. So he was leaving it over the middle of the plate a little bit more, because he was aiming differently than he had been in the past because the cutter had a different shape. So that could be something. I mean, the walk rate's still a little high, but everything else, I mean, like he's getting whiffs, he's getting Ks. I mean, he's suppressing hard contact. This is exactly who you want at the back end of the rotation, setting up games or coming in high leverage situations. And the great thing is it's not just him right now. The bullpen has just looked, like you said, Mitch, leading into this, the bullpen has looked fantastic. I mean, yeah, I think that pretty much hits. I don't know if there's anything else, like just like looking at StatCast, as you guys know that I love to do. I don't think that there's really anything else here that like really stands out. Like I said, yeah, average exit velocity, 86.1. That's in the top 7%. Hard hit percentage, 28.6%. That's in the top 5% of the league. So not only is he getting swings and misses, when people do hit the ball, they're not squaring it up. I don't know, Kevin, do you have any thought, any other thoughts on Fulmer or anybody else in the bullpen that's, caught your eye?
Well, I really think what comes to mind initially isn't it just better when we're winning? Like it seems
yeah, winning's fun.
Weird.
Is fun.
Yeah, who knew? But like the bullpen starts to put it together, and the hitting starting to put it together. We're even covering some games that some starting pitching's actually kind of a little wonky, but it doesn't matter when we win 20-9, or whatever. Yeah, when we get up that big. But a couple of months ago, we were talking about how it seems every season we struggle in the spring because we're piecing together a bullpen, but we know it'll come together. And then now it's here. Like now all the pieces are stringing along together. All of it's going a little bit, like Ron says, food tastes better when they're winning as well. Life's good. The beer's a little nicer,
Yeah.
It's a little colder. I don't know. It's just weird. It just is. It's August, but it's colder beer. It just all works out that way. I don't, it's odd because it's like, is it bad that we throw potentially away those spring games, but then we run into these hot streaks? Beers.
This is where I call it the "she's all that" theory. The movie.
Okay, what did we take off? What were the glasses? What are the metaphorical glasses?
You know that Rachel Lee Cook is a pretty girl, but she doesn't look good at the beginning. But then towards the end, she's looking pretty good, and it's like, all right, this is a pretty good movie. Towards the end of it, that's what the Cubs are like. There's some good behind it. There's Bellinger's good. Mm-hmm. Like Dansby, that's right. Fun. Like at the beginning, like you can kind of see the offense, but it struggles there for a little bit. And then there's some injuries. Freddie Prinze Jr. kind of lame through a little bit of the movie. And then, she's pretty. Like goes through this change. Like that's what the Cubs did. She's all that dust.
If to continue that comparison, I gotta say that Mark Leiter Jr. is my Rachel Lee Cook because
for sure.
Last year, I there's no way I would have ever thought I'm like, this guy's got no, thank you, and now it's like, get him out there. I need to see more of him. You know what I mean?
Isn't that wild? It's so wild.
Excellent comparison. But yeah, like he's a guy. He was he outrighted off the 40 man in the beginning of the season, right? And now to see him. Like I think I saw yesterday, like hashtag lights out when he comes in now. I'm like, man, this guy's got his own hashtag now. Like he's in, right? So,
Ron, I'm sorry. I am a big Freddie Prinze Jr. when it comes to Star Wars things because I'm a Star Wars Rebels fan. So I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll take back my slander of Freddie Prinze Jr.
Baby, like one of the best Star Wars characters. This is going back to baseball and whatever.
I was gonna say.
Like really quickly, can we touch on this? If you are a Star Wars fan and you have not watched Rebels, get over the animation.
Excellent.
It's weird animation.
Great story.
Oh my God, the storyline is phenomenal, and it's going to be incorporated into Ahsoka coming out in like 2 weeks. So get on it.
Gosh, we're such
absolutely.
That's all right. Hey,
love it. I love
baseball. It. Look, if you're watching this, if you're watching and listening to this podcast, you have to admit you are a nerd, and it's okay.
Yeah,
you're a baseball nerd. But like like being a sports fan is a category of nerd, and I feel like that gets overlooked way too frequently.
Oh yeah,
we're all nerds.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
you could have interests.
wearing a Cubs jersey to Wrigley is like not too many steps off from like cosplaying at like a convention, right?
Oh my God, it totally is. It's like those TikToks where it's like, oh yeah, my boyfriend and husband like dress up, or husband like dress up in their cute little.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Okay, really quick. We're getting a little off topic, but I got to know your guys' opinion about this, because I am very happy to wear a Cubs hat, Cubs jersey, or like Bears stuff or Bulls stuff, whatever, to the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's different if you wear. So, like I said, I went to the Bon Iver concert on Saturday. I've got a couple Bon Iver shirts. I didn't wear the Bon Iver shirt to the Bon Iver concert. Like what? It's different, right? Like it's like kind of like I'll wear another band shirt.
Yep, you always wear a different band shirt to a concert.
Yeah. Why is that? We don't have to answer that, but like if you're here, or if you want to hit me up on Twitter after the fact, why is that? I don't know. I don't know why that's
an interesting point.
Border exists, but
it's like it's one of those unwritten rules that baseball has so many of, but it's for concert going. You know what I mean? So
right.
It's weird. It's weird.
And if you do wear it, someone gets to throw at your head. That's kind of how it goes, I believe. So
yeah. The good thing I did.
You're not a real fan of this band because you're not wearing the other band's shirt.
Trust me, as somebody who's been a teacher for 13 years now, seeing kids with Nirvana shirts on and being like, "Oh, you like Nirvana?" No, this was the Target.
Every time a kid walks in, I was like, "Who's the lead singer of Nirvana?" And they're like, I don't know.
I like the smiley face.
Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
God.
Had a kid just this last year who wore a Nirvana shirt. Like every week, it was this Tuesday shirt, and every day I was like, "Man, I love Nirvana." He was like, "What's Nirvana?"
No,
you didn't even read. Well, you probably couldn't read.
Kim will never listen to this. She wanted to buy, I don't know, like probably a Rolling Stones shirt. Like that's like everybody like it feels like everybody had a Rolling Stones shirt in their closet like a few years ago. It was like a trend, and she wanted to buy it, and I was like, "Do you know anything about the Rolling?" Like I'm not a Rolling Stones fan. I don't know much about them. But I was like, "Do you know anything about the Rolling Stones?" And she was like, "No, I just like the shirt." I was like, "We're not in our house. We're not doing that. We're not doing that." She didn't have to respect me. She could do whatever she wanted, but she was like, "You're right." So I won that one.
If I am gonna wear a jersey to Cubs, I might get Adbert Alzolay jersey because he's going to be our closer of the future.
Oh my God!
You like that transition back into the bullpen talk?
That was great. I'm getting a Talkman jersey. We could talk bullpen, but we need to talk the man later in this episode too. Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about Alzolay, because he's gotten put into this closer role and he's been absolute nails. He did give up a home run the other day, but it wasn't a safe situation.
There was a 4-run lead. Yeah.
So. But he's been absolutely insane, and his big switch, like when he first came up in the league, he was like a four-seam fastball, cutter, slider guy. Yep. And now his pitch mix is totally different. The pitch lab, what the Cubs have done with him of going from a starter to now our closer. And like what was great was yesterday you had two guys that have been brought up through our organization. One started, Justin Steele, and Adbert closed it out. They're good buddies. And man, I love seeing that for the number of years that I've been a Cubs fan, and always a talk that we can't produce pitching. Well, now we are, and they're making a huge impact on our team from starter and from the closer. So what have you kind of noticed with Alzolay? Like his confidence is through the roof and making a huge impact on this team. Justin, what do you got?
I like to think I'm pretty mild-mannered, but when he gets his save and he starts pounding his chest, I'm like, oh, let's go. I will go through a brick wall for this man, and I don't even know him. You know, it's funny. He was a guy that I remember watching since, was it 2019? I think he got his first call-up. It doesn't matter, but whenever he got his first call-up, I was like, okay, I was kind of interested. I'm like, I remember hearing about him and thinking, okay, maybe he's going to be like a decent starter. They'll kind of feed him in from the pipeline. And it just never really panned out. It was either he was sent back to Iowa or there were injuries or people, guys were returning from the IL. And now to see him is this like, not just a closer, but like when he comes in, like he's dominant. Like the way he throws the ball and the reactions you get from hitters that just can't hit his stuff. In addition to that, like he bounces back. Like there's no woe is me, which I feel like sometimes some of the pitch, if I'm not a pitcher, but if I were, I'd be kind of having a hard time if I just gave up like a 450-foot moonshot. it doesn't matter what happens to him. He's just, all right, next pitch, let's go. I'll get the next guy instead. And like, it's just an awesome thing to see. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, the Cubs have had so many different closers, but this guy is just, there's something special about him. And going back to what you guys said, seeing that transition from starter to just a bullpen guy, and now he's got this defined position so far, or at least for the time being, like it suits him so well. It's awesome to see. Like that's all there is to it, really.
Yeah, I think it's just great. Like the demeanor, I think is everything, and that was something that he talked about. He tweeted about it, or maybe was interviewed about it, like before the season. That like he was ready to take on any role that the Cubs needed him to slot into. And it's funny, we talked at the beginning of the season, like, gosh, I feel like everybody on our podcast was all about Keegan Thompson taking over the closer role. And we saw how that's gone this season. I still think Keegan will figure something out and he'll be back. And is he injured right now, or is he still healthy playing?
I think he just came back to Iowa. I think he was in Arizona, kind of, I think, working on some things.
Yeah.
Development shelled at Iowa. So yeah, I think he's just come back.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the best thing about Adbert being the closer is like you just get this sense that everybody in the clubhouse loves the dude because it's very evident, and like his wife is really active on Cubs Twitter too, or at least I haven't really like noticed it this season, but like the last couple seasons she's been really active and like cheering for, obviously for Bert, but for the rest of the team too. And then Adbert will like quote tweet the official Cubs account's tweets and like add something to it, like, and it's always about the boys, like it's always about the team. And like, yeah, man, there's definitely first of all, of course the guy's got to have the stuff, which he clearly does this year, and the best is seeing him on Pitching Ninja and knowing, like, I think Corey Friedman tweeted this out. He loves seeing Adbert on Pitching Ninja because he knows that Adbert gets stoked about being on Pitching Ninja. Like his stuff is that good that it needs to be highlighted. And I think it was maybe like Saturday night, I was scrolling through and saw like a few different Cubs pitchers on Pitching Ninja, and I was like, this feels great. So yes, the pitching development has gotten there. It's a little side note, Cade Horton, dude, what a freaking draft pick. I mean, how is that looking right now? Jordan Wicks, I think, is coming off a really great start. Caleb Killian straightened some things out. I don't think he'll come back after the rain delay, but he straightened some things out in his last few starts. But man, yeah, you love to see the homegrown talent and the fact that like a guy like Adbert is willing to play whatever role he needs to help the team win, that he's that team-oriented guy. And he just happens to have the stuff and the mentality and demeanor out on the mound to make it work as closer. And like you said, Justin, like it is fun, man. Like when you see him come in, it's like, hell yeah, strap in, buckle your seatbelts, as Pat would say. It's fun. And yeah, it's like, I don't really know much about, like, we're going to nerd out for a second. I don't really know much about like the horizontal vertical break stuff. Like that's stuff that I need to get into the weeds a little bit more. I'm sure Lance Brozdowski, friend of the show, Marquee Network analyst, I'm sure Lance has some written stuff or a video about Adbert's. He throws a sweeper, a slider, and a cutter. So those are three pitches moving glove side, and they all have different shapes and profiles. So clearly there's the sweeper. This is his first year with the sweeper. So, and it's a low pitch percentage. I mean, it's 5%. So I don't know how frequently he's throwing it, but at least lately. But yeah, it's all coming together. And like someone before the deadline tweeted something about like, we need to get a real closer. And I was like, hey man, he's been great. Give him extended run. Let him prove that because I already think he is bona fide. Let him prove that he's bona fide to you. Continue to give him the run as the closer. And I'm glad that Jed, we could have used, maybe another bullpen acquisition besides Quas, but I'm glad that Jed is showing faith in Adbert and letting him run with this closer role.
Speaking of Quas, he looked good yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I like what he brings, a different arm slot, especially with the Braves. Like it's a different look, especially the Braves. Like they're getting on, like seeing the same look. That's what you need for good teams like that. Throwing a different look to really good teams is exactly what you need in your bullpen. You need one guy that is just a little bit different. And I think it's going to be, he has a high strikeout rate, high whiff rate. Like he has 2 pitches that are really, really good. Rely on those. He looked really, really well yesterday. So I was glad to see that. Let's jump to we'll get to Talkman talk for you, Jake, a little bit. But we do have, like, tonight, Drew Smiley struggled again. I'm done with Drew Smiley. Like we cannot go another outing with him, like just grooving pitches to Pete Alonso. Like we can't have it. Like he just doesn't, there's something off. He just looks like a sad puppy. Like he doesn't have the fire, and he doesn't look confident out there. When he throws a pitch, he doesn't look confident that he can, like, his curveball that he relies on a ton just doesn't look sharp. I saw one curveball tonight that really looked like it backed up on a righty and he got a strikeout. But besides that, it's just hasn't been working. We have Stroman, who hit the IL with an injury. I don't really know, like, that. I think he was just struggling and he needed kind of what Seiya needed, some time to figure some stuff out. Yeah. And I would have loved for him to be able to face the music and just after the post game, just instead of leaving, just, hey, like, no, I don't have it. Like, just own it. Like Tyone early in the year when he struggled, he just owned it. Like, hey, I'm struggling. I'm going through some stuff. I'm going to work my butt off and try to figure it out. Like, I know Stroman's going to do that. You know, that's the type of guy he is. He wants to be there for his team. But with all that said, is the starting pitching a concern as they are making a push for the playoffs? The Reds pitching is going to struggle too. Brewers, they got some holes in their rotation as well. Does the Cubs starting rotation concern you as we make this push for the playoffs? Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned because we kind of have a couple of these folks who are struggling kind of all. It's interesting about the same time frame where we kind of always have a little person kind of struggle, but I don't know that we have anybody behind them to fill in right now. Stroman's out, injury hopefully comes back and right back to it. Tyone seems to kind of have figured it out. Hopefully that sticks. It's kind of one of those, I want to hope on it, but I'm not sure it's actually going to, like, stay because we haven't seen it so far. Smiley's struggling. I don't, is this just, or is this just the hill, you know, every seems to be in the 3 phases of the game. We have one phase that struggles. Is it the starting pitching's turn to struggle, but the hitting and the defense and the relief are doing well enough to cover that? Are they going to get right in time to go into the playoffs? At the same time, we just took 2 of 3 from the Braves.
Yeah. With Javier Assad covering one of those. Outings.
You know, like it seems to be able to maybe piece it together. This is another one of those. We have a lot of utility long arm guys kind of in the bullpen. Maybe that's going to be the key when we get to the playoffs. I'm not sure. I am worried, but I also don't see a way out other than kind of pitching these guys through their struggles. Phantom IL stints to give them some time off, throw somebody else in there, kind of get them going. Maybe
I don't want to see Smiley get another start. I don't want to see him get another start.
I agree there, especially, I don't know, against the Mets of this year, and then he's getting blown up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's why I don't want this. I want this rain delay to end because the Mets are going to Met eventually. We just got to get these last couple innings.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling too. I really quick to touch on, I know we're talking Smiley, but I really quick want to touch on Tyone. So his cutter's been solid this season. And the big difference between July and August, and I know it's only August 7th, so he probably has one start? He's got one start in August. He upped the cutter usage a ton while dropping the fastball usage. So his cutter usage went from 15% in July to 32% in August. And his fastball percentage went from 41% or 42% to 24%. So you wonder if they finally found something, they identified something that, okay, like again, this is going back to the sweeper conversation. Pitching staffs, or I guess pitching coaches around the league, are telling their teams, throw your best pitch more, like work off your best pitch. So I don't know how good, like it kind of looks like the cutter has been, even so, like, I don't know. I mean, the cutter's been, it actually has not been his best pitch. I don't know, but there's obviously some kind of the XBA alone has not been great on the cutter, but maybe you play the fastball off the cutter. So you throw the cutter first, and then you show a pitch from the same slot with break, and then you throw the straight pitch. And JD was kind of talking about it in Tyone's last start, that his fastball, they were talking about the fastball break was not the same in the last start, and that Tyone was working through it, and JD recognized that, but he still was able to pitch to a solid start. So yeah, Kevin, I think that the Tyone success is it's a tightrope right now.
Brandon from CHGO talked a lot about, I think it was 2 episodes ago on theirs, about Tyone with his 4-seamer of, at the beginning of the year, it was tailing like into righties, and he was getting so much movement, he wasn't getting strikes, and he was trying to limit that ride away. And lately he's got it under control. He just couldn't locate his 4-seam fastball, and that's what he needs to control to get his other pitches to work off of it. Right. And I think that's a little bit like JD and Boog was talking about the last game, like, hey, he has it under control now, and that's where you've seen the success come from.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, so but otherwise I agree on the Smiley points. Like, I would rather not see Smiley make another start. I would rather as long as Stroman is on the IL, I am okay with Killian and Wisniewski getting starts, because theoretically,
and Assad.
Yeah, Assad had a solid start with 3 1/3. I can't remember the full line, but he against the Braves, he did well. I still think that like Scott mentions in the comments, there's not really much that you can pull up from AAA right now, or AA for that matter. And we talked about that last week. Like, I do think that Ben Brown is going to get some kind of look, but I don't think it'll be in the rotation. And I think that was reported somewhere that Ben Brown could be in the bullpen down the stretch along, maybe in September.
We need a lefty in the bullpen. Jordan Wicks is a lefty.
Well, but that's the thing. Okay, but that's what I was going to say. Does Smiley, like, are you comfortable slotting Smiley in the bullpen in 1-inning samples?
Yes.
Because I am too. Like,
I think I would be with that.
I think that's the solution in the short term. Or I guess I should say, like, at least to the end of the season.
Which will lead me to Joey's comment here.
Yes, I wanted to answer this.
He asks, if you were to set a rotation for the playoffs today, who you got? Assume Stroh is back and healthy. For me, the ball for game 1 is going to Steele.
Yes.
There's nobody else. 100%. No question. It's going to Justin Steele.
Yeah.
Who do you got at 2, Justin?
If Stroman is healthy, and he's shown, a couple games of progress over the regression he's had for a while, I guess I would go with him. And then, like Scott said in the chat, then Hendricks, just because, I mean, he's been there, he's got the experience, but yeah, I feel like it's all dependent upon how Stroman is when he comes back. Like, obviously I feel like the first half of the season before the London series, he was probably, I think it's easy to say he was overperforming his career numbers. So obviously there was going to be a regression to the mean. I think this is maybe like an overcorrection of how bad he's been since London's game, the London series. But if he can come back and get it right and be on par with his career stats, I think he's a safe bet. I know you guys mentioned Javier Assad. I'm like a Javier Assad stan. When I saw him coming in to start the game or to pitch the other day against the Braves, I was like, this is his moment. He can show that he deserves to be in the rotation. My only concern there is like, if he's doing such a nice job in the bullpen, are you then going to, if you're taking him out, does that become does your strength start to become a weakness because you're, supplementing the starting rotation? And like you guys said, Drew Smyly, I'm getting, this might be a deep cut, but like the 03 Sean Estes, that's what the vibes I get from him. Like by the end of that 03 season, I didn't want to see that guy anywhere near the mound. And sadly, Drew Smyly is rapidly approaching that for me. So yeah, I think to answer Joey's question, go back to Scott. It Steele, Stroman, Hendricks, or if Stroman's still a little shaky, I'd go Steele, Hendricks, Stroman.
Yeah.
With a short leash on if any of those guys. But besides Steele, if anybody starts to waver, get the bullpen ready immediately. So,
see, for me, I can't right now. I don't trust Stroman.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a little bit wrong physically, but I think mentally he's just not there.
Mm-hmm.
Like since the London series, he hasn't been active on Twitter at all. Like
no,
the mad Stroman that says a little things that are off the cuff is the good Stroman. He's pitching well when he's doing those things. When he's just silent and not creating any of a little bit of ruckus, like that's a bad Stroman. Like, so like somebody give him his phone back and let him rage tweet something and get him back right. Cause like we need that type of Stroman down the stretch. That's the guy we need on the mound. And so right now I think I would put Tyone number 2 just cause like he's proved it over the last 3 or 4 starts. He's trending in the right direction. For me, like Tyone has been a good pitcher the last 4 years. And so that has kind of bought enough for me. Or I would be confident giving them the ball, but with a very short leash.
Sure.
See, I'm almost definitely Hendricks number 2.
Ooh, okay.
Because if we're talking, like Justin said, if we're talking playoffs and playoff experience, it's Hendricks. Like, yeah, Stroman has experience as well. But like you said, Mitch, his physical is affecting his mental right now. His whatever is wrong with it. We know the blister issue and now the hip issue. Like his physical limitations are throwing off his mental right now. And Hendricks, like, yeah, he's got a couple rough games. Like looking at the game log. I mean, the most recent start against the Braves, 7 earned runs, but it's the Braves, man. Like you knew that there was going to be one rough game in there. And like the margin of like, I scrapped that. I scrapped that game altogether. And then aside from that, he's got a 5-run game against the Red Sox on July 14th. But aside from those 2 games, I mean, he's been Kyle Hendricks. Like he's been exactly who you hoped he could be coming back from injury. And
if you go back the last 3 years of Hendricks versus the Braves, every single time Hendricks faced the Braves, it's really bad. Yeah. He cannot pitch to the Braves lineup. Albies has his number. Acuna has his number. And I knew the Olsen, it's like, okay, do not pitch to Olsen. And then he,
it's tough because he started so well. Like this start, like the first 3 innings were great. And then it just exploded. But Scott makes a good point. Game 3 starter could be the game 7 starter. That's why I put Kyle 3rd. And yeah, like I think there is some credence to that, but it's also like, because of days off, like pitchers are going to pitch on short rest. So it's not a guarantee that the game 3 starter is going to be the game 7 starter. There could be some mix-ups, some switch-ups there, but that is a good point, Scott. That's good to keep that into account or take that into account. But yeah, I would say for me it's Steele, Hendricks, Stroman, Tyone, and Justin. I like what you said too about like you're taking a strength and then making a problem out of it by taking Assad out of the bullpen and putting him into the rotation. And like I think that Assad is like, I had a buddy texting me when did Assad start? Was that Saturday? That was Saturday,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So one of my buddies was texting our group chat, and he was like, "Oh man, I feel great with Assad on the mound." And I was like, "Yeah, the ass man's been shoving lately, but I had to drop it. So I had to drop it. But
That one's for Jeff.
Yeah, that's for Jeff. Yeah, but I feel so confident with him out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot. Like I feel like we've seen that with Cubs, like middle relievers over the last couple of years, like guys performing really well out of the pen, but then it just doesn't quite come together in the rotation because you've heard Keegan Thompson talk about the different mentality of like how when you go in as a reliever, like, you're, especially in their case, like Thompson, Alzolay before he was closer, and now Assad, they know like, okay, they're going 3 innings max, right? So they can give it their all for 3 innings or 2 innings, versus as a starter, like you've got to stretch out your stuff for, you'd hope to at least go 5, right? If not 6, you want to get your team 6 innings, if quality start if you can. It's a different mental approach and physical approach to the game. So I don't know. Justin, I think you're right. Like I would, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. Like I understand, like you need to try to patch the holes how you can. And Assad deserves the look as a starter, but if we come out at the end of this that Wisniewski and Killian are the starters, as long as Stroman's out and then moving Smiley to the pen, maybe, I'm okay with that because I just am so in love with what Assad has done in relief.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I haven't listened to anything since you said ass man, because all I have is Seinfeld quotes going through my head.
It was like last week. It was the they traded Nelson Velasquez for Nelson Velasquez.
Yeah.
Which is not as funny this week, but it was hilarious last week.
But like, okay, I have to pause for a second because like, how great is this? Like 2 weeks ago, we had an episode about who we were trading, Bellinger and Stroman, who we were getting
off.
Right.
And now we're having a conversation about what the rotation is going to look like in the playoffs. That. Like,
well, the playoff odds went up to like 73% or something.
Yeah.
Today.
It just the fact like there's meaningful games to now be watched.
Yeah.
In August and September, and seems like so long. It hasn't been that long, but it seems
2020.
Like
but even in 2020, it was like 2019 and 2020. You could kind of feel like the team didn't have it, right?
No.
Like they made it there, but it was like
2020 was a shortened season, so it was like weird. Like I don't know, it just seems to happen so fast. Like it just seems like a really long time where we've actually like are on the edge of our seats with our heart pumping in a game in August. Like that feels good.
Right.
Like that feels great. Like that we're hanging on every pitch. Like that this weekend series, like it felt like a playoff series. Like the vibes at Wrigley, like it was just amazing. And so like I'm just super pumped and excited that's about this team. Like it's a fun team to watch. We got players we can cheer for. Like they're a group that like they're together. Like they really look like they enjoy playing together. Like Bellinger, I think, really wanted to stay. Like, and so that's like it's fun. It reminds me a lot of the 2015 team. Like whether I like to say it or not, it does. Like that second half of the season like was fun to watch. Like you're hanging on every pitch, and they went on a run. They end up winning the division. There's no reason why this team doesn't win this division.
No, I agree.
I agree. And it's going to be awesome when that happens. And Wrigley fans need it. We need it as a podcast. Those players need it. So like Ian Happ needs it. He's been through kind of the whole thing. And so like, I just want to see that happen for those guys. So like, I'm super pumped.
I really quick, I want to touch on this because this happened between last podcast and this one. I think it did, at least. The Jed press conference, when he talked about Bellinger and he had a smile on his face. Like he couldn't suppress the like seeming excitement that Cody knows how we feel about him. Like,
yeah.
Do you guys look, I don't want to break my own heart, but how did you guys interpret
Oh,
that?
no, I was like, oh, they already have a deal in place.
Yeah.
Like they already have something.
I was waiting for another press conference the next day saying,
Right.
we'd like to announce a deal with him, but
Yeah,
it's, in speaking to that, like this doesn't mean anything, but like, there's such a likable team. Like there's years where there's guys on the team. It's like, oh, this guy seems like such a tool, but they need him, and these guys, like you have a nice combination of vets and younger guys working their way up that are just fun to cheer for. I mean, like, Alzolay is a perfect example. Like he worked his way up, he paid his dues, had some struggles, bounced back and forth. And now like you want to be there to see them at the top of their game. And that's kind of where they're at. So yeah, that Jed press conference was just, I'm still, as the pessimist in me, I'm still waiting for the wheels to fall off because that's just how I operate. But
that's how we're conditioned as fans,
but
man.
like,
yeah.
In a city that is so starved right now for a winning team, like across all the major sports.
Chicago Bears, though, don't sleep on the Chicago Bears.
No, I'm not. But like it's just so much fun. Like in the beginning of the season when they would go on one of those runs where they were awful, they'd get down 3-4-0, and I hate to admit this, but I turn the game off because I'm like, I have other things I have to do. Now in the last 2 weeks, it's like, oh, they're down by 3 runs. Oh, that's all right. They'll bounce back or at least make it competitive. And like
even
really,
tonight, like we said at the beginning of the podcast, it was like, it doesn't feel like the game's out of reach.
I had to explain that to my son because it was like, no, this isn't May. This is August. We're good this month. Like we're like we can come back 3 down.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
Yeah, I do have to like Ron puts out that Scott would like to say make Cody Bellinger Cub forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. That press conference was weird, and it's not like they're gonna announce anything until the end of the season, but I think I could totally see Bellinger likes the Cubs have Dustin Kelly as their hitting coach. He's worked with him in the past. I think he feels comfortable. I don't know. I'm a pretty loyal person, and I could see Bellinger being that same way of like, hey, I feel comfortable here, and I feel like I've corrected myself, and they believe in me. Right. Why would I go somewhere else and have the last 2 years happen all over again? Like, I don't want that. Like, so I don't know. But dreaming of the Cubs signing him and Shohei. And
I'm glad you said that because really quick, I'm gonna play the realist like I'm apt to do here. It just financially it can't happen.
Take out a loan.
They'll figure it out.
We're signing Jeimer back because
I do think we are going to sign Jeimer back.
Yeah,
but I do think either that or like either we sign Jeimer back or there's some kind of offseason trade made for a third base prospect. But also, I haven't checked his stats recently. I mean, he's only been playing for like a week. But I guess Matt Shaw hit the scene with a bang. The Cubs' first round pick this year. And
why would you not offer Jeimer like a 3-year deal?
For sure.
Until one of those guys.
I don't think he's going to cost that much.
No, and like, dude, he's like the perfect guy that he can play anywhere. He can hit. Like, you need that in your lineup. Like, why not? Like, dude, I would.
Scott, Scott says, stop it, Jake. They have a sports book in Wrigley. It has nothing to do with money. I agree. They can spend all the money in the world. It is the draft pick compensation now, and the stuff, the penalties for going over the luxury tax multiple years in a row. That's the issue. So, like,
let's go over it this year. Let's win it next year.
I do, yeah. I could, yeah, for sure. But then the problem is, like, if you're Say is going to be signed, because I don't think you can do Bobby Bonilla deals anymore. Like, you can't defer money like that anymore. There's some rule in the CBA. Which, like, I don't know why the CBA would have, or maybe it could have been the owners that negotiated against it, right? But like that, there's something out there that's not a thing anymore. You can't defer money that far into the future, which then would lower the average annual value, which goes against the salary tax or the luxury tax, right? look, I would love to see Shohei and Bellinger on the same team with Dan. Like, I would rather temper fans' expectations. You're right, Scott. And like he says, blah, blah, blah. It's the greatest ball player in the past 100 years. And my buddy, my buddy Josh, I don't even know if this is the podcast anymore. That's fine. He's my best friend. He should listen. He's my best friend. Listen to my fucking podcast.
Yeah, Josh. Jeepers.
Yeah, come on, Josh. Mike does. I know Mike. That's why Mike was my best man, Josh, because Mike listens to the podcast. I hope you guys are listening and you text me about this because I lost my train of thought. Oh, Josh said,
and they better be listening because it's an hour into it. If they made it this long, they are true.
If they did make this, yeah, and that's why I swore because I know they're at an hour and kids probably aren't listening anymore. If you sign Shohei Ohtani, you are bringing in money for the remainder of your franchise's existence because he is the modern day Babe Ruth, and it has nothing to do with them both being two-way players. It's just the legend of Shohei Ohtani being associated with your team. It's like it's Michael Jordan, man.
Yeah.
It's how the Bulls have lived off of Michael Jordan for 30 years, right? It's the same thing. So yes, Scott, I understand. Like, if it were up to me, of course the Cubs are signing Shohei Ohtani. It makes all the sense in the world. But like, there are signs pointing to him wanting to stay on the West Coast. And it probably has something to do with the time zone difference, being closer in times to his family in Japan. But I don't know. I am not getting my hopes up at all. But yeah, obviously the Cubs are going to be players. They'd be stupid not to, like, at this point in the game, of course they're going to say they're going to be players. But how serious it'll be, who knows? I'm sorry to bring this up so late in the podcast. We'll have plenty of conversations about this in the offseason when the offseason starts in November for the Cubs. Yeah, whatever.
I think you heard it here first, folks. Jake says we're signing Shohei Ohtani over the offseason.
That's what I take away from this. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin, for succinctly.
Yep.
Yeah.
TLDR, Jake says we're getting Ohtani.
TLDR, we're signing Shohei.
Well,
Quote.
Any parting words, Justin? We'll start with you.
No, I just thank you guys a ton. I wish I had something clever to say. Go Cubs. But no, it's been a blast. I appreciate you guys having me on, and it's been really nice to be positive about being a Cubs fan because I feel like it's been a while where I could be like, oh man, I'm actually excited to watch the game tonight, as opposed to, dear God, what are they going to do, and how am I going to be sad after the game? So yeah, I appreciate it though.
Well, yeah, I want to say thanks for joining us because it's awesome. We love having you on. So come back anytime.
Sure, for sure. Thank you guys.
Jake,
Absolutely.
What about you parting words?
Really quick, I want to say they're showing highlights in the background on rain delay. If you're watching live on YouTube and Mitch's TV, they showed the K signs in the bleachers. If you are interested in buying a K shirt, the shirts are for sale on my website. I haven't plugged this in a while. Shirts are for sale on my website. It is a pinned tweet on my profile. I have more merch coming. I've got ideas. So keep an eye out. It'll be like in the off season, but there will be more K/Cubs related merch coming. So keep an eye on that. And also,
Kevin.
Justin, thank you for joining us, obviously.
Oh, no. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
How about you?
Definitely. Thank you for joining us, Justin.
Thank you.
Glad to have fun talking positive Cubs baseball, and we're planning out our playoff rotation. Who's going to be playing where, the fact that we got all these utility players that are actually doing well and doing their jobs, and we can plug them in all sorts of places. It's a lot of fun. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah.
Mitch, what do you got?
I'm excited that we are watching meaningful baseball in August and September. And so I'm going to be living and dying every single pitch the rest of this year in loving every minute of it. Even if they don't make the playoffs, even if they lose out one game and they don't make it, this is way better than being out 10 games and these games mean nothing. And we're trying to bring up who knows from the minor leagues up. Like, this is baseball in a big market needs to be. And so this is fun. Like this is fun. Even tonight, they're losing. You still feel like they can come back and win. This is a fun team. Excited about where we're at. And so I'm glad we get to talk baseball with you guys. Like this is what it's a highlight of my week. So it's fun. So yeah, thanks for listening. This is episode 131 of the Dingers podcast. Go hit us up on Twitter. Tell us how you're feeling, what your current emotions are with the Cubs. And yeah, thanks for listening. Go Cubs.
Go Cubs.
Cubbies.
We got